Welcome to Align to Your Design. I'm your host, Baeth Davis. Isn't it time to wrap your business around your purpose and bring your greatest work to the world? Each week, join me as we explore various biometric tools such as human design and hand analysis and how to use them to fulfill your destiny and align to your design. We will reveal how to do the work you are designed to do rather than what you think you should do. Hey there, everyone. Baeth Davis. I am so happy you are dropping by Align to Your Design. We have another fascinating guest for you today, talking about things that many of you have expressed huge interest in: love, relating, how to get love, how to give love, how to love yourself, how to be embodied in your life, how to be present to the adventure of this life. I think you're going to love our guest. So I'm going to tell you about her in just a moment. I want to tell you, if you're new to the podcast, how this works. So I bring on guests that I personally feel are fully in their purpose. And by that, I don't mean that they're perfect or that they're so enlightened they walk on water. These are human beings who will, determination, decision, surrender, whatever their approach was. Some people need to be determined. Some people need to let go. Whatever it is for you, these are people who have said yes to their purpose and are bringing their gifts to other people. As I often say to my clients, if you don't have money in your bank account, it's not necessarily that you're bad with money. You might feel unworthy of money. That's an issue to work out. Ultimately, why you struggle financially is you're not giving of your gift. Every single one of us has a gift to bring to the other. And if you're not doing that, your life will not work ever. So you have to find a way to bring that gift forward. So I, on my journey, cross paths with some amazing people who are living their purpose in a way that's real and authentic and free. And I want you to meet these people so that you have role models, you have examples when you maybe have a bad day or you lose confidence, that it can be done, and it can be done in a way that's authentic for you. That's the whole approach to this, is it's got to be authentic for you. All right. So that is the name of the game here at Align to Your Design. We have a wonderful chat with the guest, and then we look at their human design, and we talk about some aspect or multiple aspects in their chart and how it's relating to what they're doing in their life. So with that, welcome to Align to Your Design. Now, our guest today is Kendra Cunov, and she is the founder of, I love this name, she is the founder of the Fierce Grace Incubator. You're going to incubate your fierce grace if you interact with Kendra. And she also has created the collective, a global web of women devoted to embodied wholeness. Kendra has been studying, facilitating, and most importantly, practicing authentic relating, embodiment practices, and deep intimacy work for nearly 20 years. Kendra has worked with thousands of men, women, and couples in the areas of embodiment, intimacy, communication, and full self-expression. She is most deeply devoted to wholeness. Kendra is one of the most important teachers in my life, I'd say in the past decade. And it is my total honor to welcome Kendra Cunov to Align to Your Design. Welcome to the show, Kendra Cunov. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's really good to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy to be with you. So my first question for you is, how did you come into this line of work? Was it something years ago you knew you wanted to do, or was it more a serendipitous synchronicity path that led you into being a teacher of embodiment and intimacy work?
I would say it's a little more the latter. In terms of when you say serendipitous or synchronicity, and then that piece of just following breadcrumbs along the way. And part of that had to do with, I was living in a Buddhist monastery, which is where I grew up, but I had gone back as a young adult. And I had this one moment in particular that really stood out because obviously that's a container of deep practice, but it's a very self-inquiry, like with oneself kind of practice. But we were living in community in this little valley. And there was this one morning when I kind of looked around me and I thought, like, but what is this relational thing? I think I was 19 or 20 at the time. And I thought there's this deep personal inquiry, but what is this other thing that we're not talking about here? And that was like a key moment. And then honestly, I got involved with a man who was not great in many, many ways for me. But I think a big part of what he did was that I followed him out of the monastery, and he introduced me to a lot of relational personal growth. In terms of, I mean, I studied with Marshall Rosenberg and David Data and went to Landmark. It's sort of like I did all the things, and I was like, whoa, this is a whole other world. Anyway, I followed that all along the way and sort of found myself here.
So what is here for you?
Gosh, that is a great question. Because it really has been that. I think it's very important for me to follow these, like I call them breadcrumbs, or the way that things arise. And it's funny, I was just talking to a friend of mine who's a business coach, and she was talking about how people do, they'll like do a big pivot. And I said, I've never really understood that. Because for me, it's always just like, well, I'm doing this, and then and then this is part of it, or then we go here. But it never feels like it's not connected. I started the very first piece of teaching that I was ever doing was for men who wanted to have better relationships with women in a program. Again, this is almost 20 years ago, called the Authentic Man Program. And it was sort of like, oh, this is being offered, and it's wonderful and fulfilling. And then there was this shift into more looking at all of our relationships rather than just those intimate relationships, and what is authentic relating itself. And then there was sort of another shift into a little bit more, again, specifically intimacy and polarity work again. And then there's been this shift here. And I would say, when you're reading my bio and it ends with, I'm most deeply devoted to wholeness, I would say, like, that's where here is now. That whatever seems like or feels like it really serves people's wholeness is what I am most interested in working with.
How do you experience wholeness? How do you know that you're feeling whole or not feeling so whole?
Mm-hmm. So one of the ways that I like to think about wholeness is like we have access to all the parts. And I wrote a piece years ago called The Myth of Authenticity that was really this piece around that whatever is sort of loudest or most present or we think is right there, it's not that that's not authentic, but we also have these kind of well-worn grooves. So I tend towards a certain kind of stillness or a certain kind of calm or a certain kind of listening. And it's not that that's not authentic for me, but I'm also like actually a very silly person. And more historically, not so much present, but that was a less well-worn groove. And they're both actually authentic, or like a louder, more dramatic part of me, or they're actually all parts of me. And so a lot of the places where I'll take people is, I like to say, of course, we're all already always whole. Like we're not broken. Nobody's broken. Nobody can really be broken. But the question is, do we have access to all those parts? And so often I'll take people into places that they might say, well, that's just not me, or that doesn't feel totally authentic. And I like to say, well, you never have to go there again, but let's just check it out, because we actually don't know if we've never explored that realm of expression.
Beautifully put. It's quite shamanic.
It can be, for sure.
Soul retrieval, in a sense. Having permission almost to have access to these different parts.
Well, and I think, again, there's these sort of pendulum swings that happen both culturally and then within the personal growth world. And there was so much over culture stifling of certain parts of ourselves, or like any kind of vulnerability or sharing feelings. And so there's almost a pendulum swing to like, no, I have to be really true to who I am. And it's good. It's like a good pendulum swing. And then it's like, yeah, but like, who are you?
Right.
Actually?
Really.
Like we could get a little more playful with this idea of, who the fuck am I? Like, I don't know. I'm sort of just a miracle arising. So let's play.
Beautifully put. I understand the pendulum swing right now to people trying to name and codify their identity to overcome oppression and to have recognition and to have equal access to benefits. I totally understand that. And then there's a point where I feel like it goes too far, and it comes back to, okay, that's helping you ascertain being equal, and everyone I feel is equal, or is not equal. You know what I mean? We're not all equal. We're all entitled to being treated with respect. That's what I mean. And
absolutely.
We all have different skills and abilities, and you know what I'm saying. But this idea of being beyond our identity and having that kind of it's almost like a palette of colors that you can play with, right? You have more, in dance, I love to dance. And so the more dance classes I take, more structured dance classes, the better my interpretive freeform dance becomes. So by taking ballet and taking jazz and taking salsa and going to tango lessons and all of that, it gives me a bigger vocabulary, right, to flow when the music just starts playing. And people say, oh, how do you do that? I'm like, well, I practice dancing. And then when it's time to just play, I have a much bigger vocabulary or palette. And I feel like in many ways, you certainly have done that for me. And from what you're describing, have been able to achieve that for yourself, is to have access to these different parts of yourself.
Absolutely. I love the color palette analogy for sure. And I can mix them. And I think it's really helpful. It is sometimes counterintuitive, but it's helpful to remember that sometimes structure allows for freedom. And that the ultimate goal actually is freedom, right? It's freeing our bodies, it's freeing our emotions, it's freeing our thoughts, like the ultimate goal. And so it becomes a lens to look through, which is like, is this moving me, in that compass point towards freedom?
Wow. Beautifully put. So what would you say has been your biggest challenge in intimacy? Or one of?
Yeah, right. One of. Well, it's so interesting. I just realized back in May that my current partner and I have been together for 10 years. And we've had a very circuitous path. And in some way, from the outside, we look quite conventional at this point. We're in a heterosexual relationship, and we have a child and we live on the same property. And but it really took this consciously choosing along the way. And there really is like a new, I think when I had that realization, we've been together for 10 years, I was like, yeah, it really is a thing to be with someone for a long time. Like there's another thing that's called for when you're really with someone over time. So in some ways, I'd had a fairly devastating breakup. And I would say that the two challenges in this last decade that I've had have really been allowing myself to fall in love again. I actually remember the moment when I realized, I'm actually at a choice point here, and we can be just fine this way, and we can be just fine, or I could actually risk that my heart could be broken again, and I could be hurt, and I could feel the choice point. And I think I don't think it's just one or the other necessarily, but, I work with women in a program called the No Man Diet, or in Relationship by Design Fundamentals, which you mentioned as well. And I always really like to remind people that they have a choice, that there are these choice points, and actually that none of them are better or worse. They don't make them better or worse people. And that we get to stand at those choice points. But that was a challenge for me, was like, yes, actually, I choose this way where I could actually have my heart broken. And that's what I choose. And then there's been this piece of showing up over time. And I've actually had on my, I don't really call it a to-do list, but the things that I do every day. And I've had on there basically love Lucas, who's my boyfriend. And I'm on like a 180-day streak of like every day. And I put it on there because I want to make the conscious choice every day to love him in some way. And find out each day, what is that?
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And has he noticed or reflected back to you this greater openness, or?
Not explicitly.
No.
But in our relationship and in his being, I would say yes.
So is it something you feel?
It's something that I feel. Yeah.
You feel closer?
I do. I feel closer, and I feel his unguardedness distinctly.
Yeah. And where do you feel it? Is it something you feel in your body?
I think sometimes, in some way we feel everything in our body. So probably yes. And then in some way it's like I feel it between us. And it's grown, like it grows. But again, I actually remember the moment we were sitting next to each other on the couch, and I suddenly I was like, oh, there's literally there was no defense. And I was like, wow, it's really amazing. Given just some of our history and where we had been and these various things, I thought, oh, just that's not there was really distinct.
Now you mentioned the no man diet. Will you share what that is? What is a no man diet? I can kind of guess, but I want to hear from you.
In its most basic form, it is, it's no dating, relationship, sex, intimacy. So I have had women go through who don't identify as heterosexual, or who date both men and women, or are queer. But no man diet is a little bit catchier than like no intimate relationship diet. And another way I talk about it is a relational reset. And that place where a lot of times, if we're in a dynamic that we don't like, or we notice ourselves chronically having the same, we're choosing the same partner, or we get into the same dynamics, or I'm not met in the same way, or there's that kind of repetitive and often, that idea is I just need to choose better people, which is partly true. But there's really this way that we create dynamics together. And so often, if we see something, people have an insight and they're like, oh, now I'm going to change. And that's kind of true, right? The awareness is a big piece. And then we have the potential for that kind of change. But often, especially if we really have long time habits, and it's not just one relationship, or however long that relationship was, but this kind of long time habits that often come from when we were children, how we related to our parents, and the first time we ever had our heart broken, or, all these things. So they're quite, they're really long time habits, is that it takes this kind of time to totally reset. And what I find is that women often, it's like they know and they don't know, but they step in and they're like, okay, yeah, it's just no dating. Maybe that sounds hard, maybe that sounds easy, but like it's kind of simple. And then what ultimately happens is bumping up against everything that we use our habit ways of relating to avoid in being with ourselves. So it's 12 weeks, and there, each week we sort of touch on a new layer, and there's practices, and it's an incredible community. Like it always the community of women and how they support each other just blows my mind. And really being on that kind of a journey of totally making that choice to clear the slate completely, so that then we can step into a whole new way of relating.
It's really important. I actually found I mean, I had heard of you and seen you before I joined one of your courses, but I had heard of this no man diet before. Yes, the word, word is on the street about your no man diet. And I had self-imposed one after a rather unpleasant breakup. It wasn't the worst breakup of my life, but I won't go into details. It wasn't pretty. And I just could spit on a man. I was like, I need to be by myself. Like and I just went into seclusion for 5 or 6 months. And during that time, I found your course, Beyond Boundaries. Mm. And then after that course, I did the Relationship by Design Fundamentals, which are very generous to give us access to those classes. So I have them I have the material to go back to and revisit. Let me just say a little bit about my experience in Beyond Boundaries, because that was the first class I took with you. And then I wanted to ask you about how that all came about, because I think it was like 4 parts, maybe over like 4. It was very straightforward the way you introduced it. But the thing that so struck me was how clear and simple and in a way natural you make your teachings. And one of the first things you spoke with the group about was this idea that the boundaries already exist.
Yes.
They're already there. And it was like, because with the ex, I'd already broken up with him before and should have kept it that way. I gave it, but he had broken boundaries and I didn't stick with my boundaries. So I was like retracing, the boundary. And the boundaries were already there. But sometimes we don't know they're there till after. Yes. We don't know. Sometimes we don't know. I often don't know I need a boundary or need to say something or reinforce the boundary or set parameters to protect my time or whatever until something happens. Yes. And then I realized, there is a boundary there. I just haven't been acknowledging it. So that was so profound for me, that course. It really helped me consciously feel my own space, my own aura, my own, I don't know what you call it, my aura, my own energy field, and become super mindful of how I interact with other people. Like I'm because of your course, I'm aware of it every day now. Even when I'm driving, I leave more space in case for whatever reason I get rear-ended, or if my steering wheel's the wrong way and I get smacked, I'm not going to go into the oncoming traffic. It's just little things like I'm going to leave 2 car spaces, even though I'm at the red light. Let's just leave some space. Mm-hmm. Let me give that person, the client, time. They're clearly upset. I'll reach out to them in a couple of days. Like just really honoring the energy flow. Mm-hmm. And so I'm wondering, I have so many questions about this class for you. First of all, why boundaries? And how did you know that you were a person called to teach this work? Because I felt like every person, every child, like in the 1st grade, should learn these boundary fundamentals. Why don't we learn these things? I
mean, honestly, I feel the same way. It's like that program for sure. I'm like, literally every person will benefit.
Every person needs that course. Yes. I hope you want to consider getting it into selling it to corporations and colleges. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. That's another revenue stream for you right there, because people don't have this information. They don't.
Yeah. I mean, these are fun ideas. I've been looking at just that piece of speaking about why everybody needs this, right? Because I have my own lens, but I really do believe. So there were a couple things that happened. First, I want to speak to that piece you said about what a revelation it was that boundaries already exist. And so both that, but I would say really all of my work is deeply informed by connecting with nature. And I think, we are obviously part of nature, but we have this sort of push-pull separative relationship with, and what, put in quotes, nature. What is nature, right? So pretty much everything I teach, like there's a way that I see, everything is relationship, and plants are in relationship with each other, and we're in relationship with trees and all the ecosystems, right? The way ecosystems are. And so that piece was really clearly almost just transmitted, right? It was like I saw it. Mm-hmm. Oh, they're already here. And then there's the question. And the other thing that I like about that, and this again points to that piece of, I like to really let people know they always have a choice. I can know I have a boundary and I can choose not to say it. Mm-hmm. I can choose to cross it, actually. it still exists, and there will be some sort of consequence for that choice. The same way that there's a consequence if I choose to name it or hold it or share it with another person, right? There's impact. And we've recognized that impact is there because we say it's already there, no matter what I choose to do with it, whether I choose to say it or not, hold it or not, cross it myself, let somebody else cross it, completely hold it, right? It is a thing. So I just love that because it really gives us this choice. We're just like, oh, right, if it's already all there, then I get to choose how I want to work around it. And then I love this piece that you said about just where you see it everywhere and the way we can make these decisions. Partly we just become much more aware, what you called your aura, or I would call it, right, our energetic awareness.
Yeah.
And we start to become aware of other people's like energetic body. And it's really different than like walking on eggshells. Like, oh no, I have to be really careful. It's just like, oh, I just sense this person and this would make everyone's life better if I just did this. Like, why would I not want to do that? That it creates more space, it creates more life, it creates more love, it creates more laughter. Why would we not? So I think that you really took it and were able to feel the way in which now you're just in contact with the energetics of other beings, right? Is so great. That like makes my heart sing.
Oh, good.
And then so this program actually came to me while I was sitting in a meadow near Mount Shasta. And partly I knew I wanted to teach this because just like you were saying, I actually found that I would work on boundaries with nearly every person that, came into my sphere, my clients or my students. And they didn't always know we were doing boundary work. They didn't come going like, I need to work on my boundaries. They came going like, there's this issue. And I was like, okay. And I didn't even always say that's a boundary issue, but I could see, oh, these are actually boundary issues. Yeah. So I really wanted to reframe it because I could see that people didn't necessarily recognize that. And then I wanted to create something where people could just get that, in and of itself. Like, this is clearly foundational. And then specifically, boundaries were sort of arising in the cultural consciousness, this idea like, oh, this is a thing that we should have. But I saw it so two-dimensional. Like, it's just about what we say no to. It's just about, like kind of pushing people away, or it's just like the limiting factor, rather than that it's actually like a deeply creative process. And this is this huge place where we create our lives by where we delineate between different kinds of relationships and what happens here and what happens here, and just how deeply sacred that is. And how generative. So I really wanted to speak to that. And that was one of the big reasons why I named it Beyond Boundaries. I mean, it's sort of like beyond the limiting idea we have about what boundaries are. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great name.
Yeah.
Years ago in my 20s, I lived in this apartment in LA, and I had these neighbors, and they were a little off their nut, and they really seemed hell-bent on being friends with me, but I didn't really want to be friends with them. I wasn't feeling it, and they would come by Sunday morning at 9 a.m. and knock on the door. And I've never been a morning person. I mean, our interview today was scheduled for noon Eastern. 11 a.m. is when I start my workday. And I love it because I need the morning to get my shit together. And they would come knock on the door. So one day I opened the door. I was like, could you just not on Sunday? Like, it's just, I sleep in on Sunday. I've worked all week. Just call me first. And they were like, oh, okay. So later I saw her in the walkway of the apartment unit, and I was going to my car, and she's like, Beth. I'm like, oh God. She comes over and she points at me. She says, people who love each other don't have boundaries.
Oh.
And I said to her, and I was only like 26 years old, I said, that's just not true. I said, if we don't have boundaries, it's never going to work out. But it's not working out because we don't have boundaries. I got to go. I'll talk to you later. That's my boundary. I'm leaving. And then I just told them, I said, I can't have contact with you anymore. Like, you don't respect my boundaries. And they were like, ah. And that was like the beginning of me starting to become aware. That I was holding this idea that people just understood you respect people's time and space and energy, and you tune into them first before you knock on their door. And no, a lot of people are completely oblivious. So I'm really glad that you're bringing this forth. But yeah, that was my first time really being aware that, oh, no, not everyone understands this stuff. And
it's hilarious, honestly, that, and even that.
It is hilarious. It is.
The way that they would respond. And I find, and especially women and females, I mean, there's just so much acculturation here. But I work with so many women who second guess themselves, right? They set some sort of a limit and the person pushes and they're like, oh, maybe, or they get mad about it or something like that. And they're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I'm like, actually, their response just underlined why you needed it in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, I mean, when I was dating, I dated a lot of people, like my 100 coffee dates. And I remember I would get to a certain point and I just knew, I'm like, this isn't going to work out. So I'd call the guy or I'd even meet with him and I'd say, you know, we're not a match. Don't you feel it? We're just not clicking. And they would flip out, you know, and start calling me names. And I would just start laughing. And I would say, I was like, well, thanks for confirming that my decision's correct, because your behavior is really the whole reason it's not going to work out between us, because you're just all about yourself. There's a person here that you don't even see. But I didn't even have to say that. I would just laugh and be like, okay, man, after they'd called me the C word a few times. And I'd hang up the phone. And so, yeah. But I recently in this relationship, because of your course, I've really been practicing noticing these boundaries. And it's made our communication so much better. Just so much better. I won't go into examples right now. I have more questions for you. So did Beyond Boundaries, amazing course. Anyone listening, watching this interview, please get on Kendra's list. All the information will be in the notes for the show, Kendra's website and her link, so you can go check out everything she's doing. The next course I took, Relationship by Design Fundamentals. So will you share a bit about how that came about and what your intention is with that course?
Yeah, thank you. There were a few things that happened. One is that I had been for several years really immersed in co-teaching with John Wineland and really creating work together. And in a lot of ways, you know, people who would take our longer term programs, we did end up getting into, you know, just relationship in general. But the bent of the work was much more around intimate relationship, sexual polarity, which is awesome, you know, deeply needed in the world as well. I love teaching with John. I love teaching that work. But I have a deep love. I mean, my original work was really around authentic relating. And I have a deep love also for the ways in which we can work with all the relationships in our lives. And really where I believe that we just have much more power than we think we do in all those places. Like I worked with a group of dentist office managers. I mean, you know, talk about niching, but I was teaching at a conference and that was them. And they felt really caught between, they were like, oh, we don't have power because we're not the owner, or we're not the dentist, or we're just the manager. And so we're kind of told how it has to go. And I was like, you have the most power of anybody. You're actually creating the culture of the entire office. So how do you want it to go? And then we can look at how to do that. You know, and then people in intimate relationship, I just hear so much of like, well, they want ... And it's sort of like, so I guess blah, 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 you know, whatever. Or there's this like abdication. Well, that's just the way it is. Or like, well, so I see it in business, and then even in friendships. A lot of times the way that it will happen in friendships is like, I guess I've just outgrown that friend group. And sometimes that's true. I'm not saying that's never true, but I'm often like, okay, but is there like one person in that friend group you actually want to connect with? And just because as a group, they only go to bars and talk about how shitty men are, you know, and then you think you either have to do that or you can't be friends with them. Like, what if you reached out to that one person and you just said like, hey, I'd love to have coffee. I'd love to go for a walk with you in the middle of the day. And then when you're with them, you just bring up what you want to talk about, like find out. So I find that there's this place where people they see how things are and think it has to be that way.
Yeah, well, they have some idea in their head, right? And then they just overlay it and they make a decision from it, but that's not necessarily what's happening.
almost never actually what's happening. I don't want to say, I mean, again, like
it isn't what is happening.
Yeah, we
it's a
give
projection.
people the opportunity to like either, shift or confirm. I mean, and I used to say this when I taught authentic relating specifically, was that I would say, there are people in the world who do not want to relate like this. That is true. But there is no type of person that doesn't. It's not just like, men don't want to relate like this, or rich people don't want to relate like this, or people at my work don't want to relate like this. Like there's no type of person, but you will find people. You'll go try this, and there will be people who are like, just don't want to do it. And I'm like, great, like find that out on the first date, or like find that out, try it, and let yourself find out rather than making this assumption. So that was really the impetus. And I put it off for a long time because I wanted it to actually to be a longer program. And then someone on my team said, well, what if it was like just a fundamentals or just the base? I think they said basics. And I was like, no, I don't teach basic. Like, that's just not me. But then they said fundamentals. And I was like, oh, yes, there are actually some key fundamentals. And yes, I can do that.
Yeah, because a fundamental is a foundation of something.
Yes. Exactly. It was like the pillars,
support. Yeah.
Foundation, it's like if these things, and then it's how they get, so you went through the program. So it's authenticity, desire, curiosity, and generosity, which again, we all know what those words mean, but then there's what do they actually mean in practice? And what do they mean in practice in specific relationships?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I love to do.
And I have to tell you, I've been bringing that to this relationship we're 5 months in, so it's pretty new, but it's 5 months in. So we're kind of over the 3 months, beginning of relationships is always so weird and fraught with insecurity and all the little, like, don't text too much. I mean, it's just so nerve wracking for me. I'm like, I hope we make it through month 3. But we did. And I could talk to him and he goes, oh, Beth, starting relationships is so awkward. You just have to kind of just stay in there. I'm like, it's true. But I've noticed that we are bringing, both of us, those 4 fundamental. And just last night we got to his house. I picked him up from work because he bikes to work and he got a flat. I said, I'll pick you up. So I picked him up. And at his house, there were all these boxes from Amazon. And I was like, oh, look at that. And he went up, he goes, oh yeah, they're all for us. And I said, for us. So we go inside and he starts unpacking these boxes. He'd bought new bed sheets, which we needed desperately because I don't know where his sheets came from, but no amount of washing was going to make them right. They were like guy sheets. They just need to be burned, but they were clean, but they were disgusting. So those sheets, I pulled them off the bed and I put the new sheets on and threw them away. And he bought us this giant fancy Scrabble board because we just started playing Scrabble on a shitty board from Target. Already had water stains after the first use and the little tiles slide off. So we bought like the deluxe version that spins and is beautiful. And I was like, oh, you bought that for us. He's like, yeah, we got to do this right. I thought, oh, you're being so generous. He's like, thank you for everything you do too. So I'm noticing that I can be my full self with this person because I'm a very generous person. And I was always the one I was told I was over giving. And I'm like, no, I just give. That's just how I do. I'm not in that way in all my relationships, not just with men. And I was like, I don't want to have to modulate my generosity because other people feel incompetent or unable to reciprocate. Yeah. And so that was a boundary for me. Like the other person needs to be able to reciprocate in their own way, their own form of generosity. And I learned that from you. Oh, so that course gave me a way to look for those 4 qualities. Yes. Instead of being in an away from mode, like I don't want this and I don't want that. And, the away from, it's good to know what you don't want. That's part of the boundaries. But then what do I want? Yes. So thank you. Thank you.
Oh,
thank you.
You're so welcome. And I love, even looking at something like a Scrabble board. What's beautiful about that, and then you pointing to how it's the lens of like the pillars is, that might never have been something that would end up on your want list.
Right.
Specifically, but then actually what gets created from that is exactly what you want, which is that you want these experiences of the way that you connect, and that's this way you connect, and it like there's something that gets created around that that's like, this is how I want to feel. but I never would have said, I want this Scrabble board, like,
Right.
And so I think that's the beauty of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the beauty of it is it's his love and care for me.
Yes.
And the connection that is created, like you said, through playing Scrabble.
Yes.
Because it actually, we laugh so much and we love beating each other. And, he'll be like, I'm going to trounce you. And I'm like, no, you're not. We have such a good time, like just really, we don't let each other win. But we laugh so much. And then, we just bond over it. So when he did that, it touched me. Like you said, it's like getting a diamond ring. It was that meaningful.
Yeah.
Because it came from authenticity. Yeah. Curiosity, generosity, desire, all of that.
Yes.
And now when we look at it, it's like, oh, that Scrabble board represents our relationship.
Yes.
It isn't the cheap one from Target. It's the fancy Scrabble Deluxe.
About what matters to you, to the two of you and your relationship.
That's right. It doesn't matter what anyone else is, but between us, like this is meaningful.
Yes.
So I thought that was so amazing that happened last night in light of this interview. All right. So we're just about at time. I want to look at your human design before we wrap up here. For all of you new to Align to Your Design, I always ask our guests what they want to look at in their chart. So of course I asked Kendra before the show, and she was curious about, I think your process around creativity. Yeah. And how you can kind of get in a groove that maybe you feel, do you feel like stuck in the groove creatively or trapped by it?
Well, really wanting to honor like how profuse, honestly, my creativity is without feeling overwhelmed by it, but actually honoring, like, it's kind of nonstop.
Yeah, it is for you.
Yeah,
it is. And the reason it's nonstop, do you see the chart?
Yes, I do. Mm-hmm.
The reason it is nonstop is because gate 1, which is off your G center, and the G center here is a magnet that essentially holds your body together. Science has proven this. We all have one. It's an actual magnet. This pen has it. Anything that is an object has a magnetic center, and the frequency of it is essentially love. So everything is held together by this consciousness of love, and love in a sense of generating more. That's what the G center is. It wants to generate more awareness, more love, more purpose, more congruence, more direction, more clarity. That's what it seeks. And the one gate off the G center, notice that it's number 1. I always think it's so interesting. The very first gate, and the gates relate to your DNA. There's 64 codons of DNA, 64 gates in human design. The creativity gate is number 1, and it's self-expression. And it happens to be in your design sun, which is basically the energetic force of your body, is to create. What keeps you healthy is to use your voice in a creative way, which you do through teaching. And maybe singing and other things with your voice. I don't know if you sing, but and it's leadership.
It's helpful to hear you say that and go like, oh yes, like this is not just some. Yes, this is you say that. Yeah,
it's wow, isn't it? Like this is your genetic code. Everything in white you don't have to worry about. Whatever's not defined in our genetics is what we're drawing in from other people. So what you don't have, other people bring you the experience of. How convenient. But everything that is colored in is you. And the thing that's so dynamic about your chart, because you are a manifesting generator, which means you've got your will that connects to the spleen, and then it goes up here, connects to G center, and then connects up to the throat. And then also your sacral connects up. So you have 2 motors that essentially connect to your throat, which gives you massive manifestation potential when you speak. When you essentially inform people of your point of view, it has a very strong impact on others. There's an innovative energy that is transmitted to people. So with that, what keeps you healthy is to be a leader. Line 5 is leadership. Be a leader through your creativity And the purpose of the creativity, and here's your core genius, the purpose of your creativity, and people have different purposes for it, is to give people direction. The 214 channel essentially connects this G center down to your sacral, which is your sex chakra. And people that have the 214 are the leaders for humanity. People that have that channel, like you're one of the people. I don't have that channel. I'm part of it. I don't have the whole thing. You're one of the people who's actually leading the collective towards something more expanded, something healthier. Now, not everyone's going to follow you, of course, but that's what you're doing. And then you also have the 731 channel, which is the democratic leader. So you have to be asked to lead. People say, hey, will you come? Will you lead? Hey, can I buy a class from you? Like, you'll be asked. And then you say yes to the leadership if it's correct. So your creativity serves a very profound purpose of giving people direction, helping them be part of the right community, and essentially finding their life purpose. That's the gold that they're able to take away from what you do. And also your emotional center is completely open. So you're not an emotional type. If you ever get really emotional, it's other people. And I can tell you're sacral just from talking to you because you're steady. You can tell I'm emotional because my voice goes all over the place. So people that are emotional who are correct are kind of all over the place. Energetic, their energy kind of goes, right? But you're very, very steady. And what you do is you're able to take on people's emotions and amplify them and then look at them and see what is actually going on emotionally with people. So I could say a whole lot more, but I just want to encourage you to understand that your creativity is the leading force in your physical body. And it is what supports you in this life. And you're an entrepreneur. You're here to teach people intuitively how to behave correctly for themselves. A lot of what you teach is behavior, what to say, what not to say, how to do it. You give people guidelines so that their behavior gets them the result they want. Ultimately, how do you behave in such a way to have the experience that feels good to you? And you're a master of that. So I'll stop there. In the name of time, I just looked at the time and I have to go to another interview today. But I thank you, Kendra, for your time. And what are you going to take away from today, from your chart, if anything?
That piece around the importance of creativity is just really, it's very timely for me. So I think there's ways that there's like pieces of that I've known in a feeling way, or they kind of swirl. And just last month, actually, one of the things I took on was this idea of attending to my creativity in different ways. And so it just feels it feels like a very timely confirmation. I appreciate that. And how important it is actually for my vitality and my life force. Yeah. Yeah.
It's what keeps you radiant, is being creative. Your radiance, your actual physical health is the result of creativity. Whereas in my chart, it's being alone that keeps me healthy. Being alone and reading and researching. And that's what I do when I'm alone. I read and I research and I hibernate. And even in the summer, I'll close all the drapes and go into my cave and read. So it's knowing that is just so empowering.
Yes.
So, you have more permission. Yeah. Create. Creating heals you. Creating makes you money. It's everything for you. It's the driving force in your being. Yeah. So thank you for this time today. Before we go, you have a course coming up in August. Do you want to just briefly talk about that? And then we'll make sure to give out the link.
Absolutely. I actually loved when you were saying that this piece around that's for me, it's like giving people directions so that they can discover their life purpose. Like just you using those words, because again, actually the same field near Mount Shasta where Beyond Boundaries came to me at the same place. Also this course, Pleasure, Purpose, Power. For women, it'll be a 12-week program. We're opening up the doors in July, but it'll actually begin in August 2021. And that piece specifically around purpose, it is that thing where it's like one of my great joys in life when people touch on what is actually true. It's not what they do, right? It's like who they be. And everyone has it. And I think people get caught and lost in this place of like, no, what am I going to do? I'm like, no. You already have a purpose. How are you going to live it? So obviously there's a lot more to it, because I actually think pleasure and what feels like pleasure, not just sexual pleasure, but that's a huge part of where, as women, especially, we touch our purpose. And then to me, power is actually the natural outpouring of the first two, right? It's not something we have to do. It's not something we have to get. It's not something we have to take back. It literally is the organic arising from pleasure and purpose, embodied wholly. So I'm super, super excited about it. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. So pleasure, purpose, power.
That's right.
You're going to open admission in July, and it will start August 2021.
Yeah.
Oh, I may be taking another class with you, Ms. Cunov.
It'd be so fun.
Your classes are amazing. And the thing is, they're elegant, they're simple. There isn't too much preamble material. You know, I don't need to watch 6 videos on how to use the portal. You know what I mean? Like you make it's very accessible. It's very easy. And you're available. You're really available to help all of us. So thank you for this time today. This was such a joy.
Such a pleasure. Such a pleasure. Yeah.
And to be continued.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thanks everyone for listening, and come on back to Align to Your Design. We'll be back with another hot, fresh episode very soon. Bye for now. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Align to Your Design. If you did, please grab my free report, Business by Design, at yourpurpose.com, and then join our Facebook group, Align to Your Design. See you next time.